High school teachers of Reddit, what's the most awkward position a student has ever put you in? One of my very good looking male friends is a science/maths teacher. He's one of those mad people that loves to make maths fun, and honestly his classes are like a damn performance. It's beautiful, but a lot of the girls in the class just giggle and ask him if he has a girlfriend. He kept deflecting them and concentrated on making the class fun, but then they got nasty to a quiet girl he paid too much attention to. She was actually interested in math, and he gave her some extra material after class that he thought she'd like. He fully put his foot down and demanded a parent meeting with all of the girls in question parents, and told them straight up they could either act like mature people or get out, and that he didn't deserve to be borderline sexually harassed while working. Most of the parents were just mortified their daughters would behave like that, but a few were like it's a compliment, etc. Luckily admin were on his side. A 9th grade student in my world history class came to my classroom after school to make up a quiz. She sat down across from my desk, and when I looked up I noticed that her shirt was unbuttoned almost completely down to her waist. She had a scarf on, so at a glance she just looked normal, but she definitely unbuttoned her shirt almost all the way down right before entering my classroom alone. I honestly thought for a second that the school may have paid her to test how much integrity I had as a male teacher. It was uncomfortable. Edit should have been more clear. School policy was to keep the door open when alone with any students regardless of gender, which it was. It was right after school, so there was still a lot of activity in the hallways. Her being in there with the door open wasn't out of the ordinary at all. The way she was sitting kept anyone in the hallway from seeing what she had done, which made it even more awkward. I just didn't look at her and acted like I didn't notice. She never did anything like that around me for the rest of the year. Well, this is a story from a while ago, back when I wasn't working for the school, but gave music lessons and such while in school. One student was gay, but his family was very religious, so he found other outlets to display this side of himself, mainly through playing a character for a drama/improv class in creative writing. This had been going on for about a year, but the real meat of the incident is when he decided to release his latest publication. This was essentially erotic friend fiction with the two main characters bearing a striking resemblance to me and another student. The story contained explicitly sexual content, like not just vanilla. Some kink was thrown in for good measure. Now, I was in the fortunate position that I wasn't a school employee, rather a clinician that just used the facilities for lessons. So I could pretend I hadn't seen it and hope that the discussion never led to me from the school administration. I basically kept my head down and let the whole incident blow over, but some kids just never really let it go and would tease me about it in good humor. The fanfic was written horribly, and I was close enough in age to throw some shots back, PG of course. So yeah. Somewhere out there's a saucy sexy romp into a repressed high school kid's gay fantasies with me as a phenomenal power bottom. Some context: I teach students with intellectual disabilities. Imagine being an ATO in a teenager's body. These kids are just honest and always say what is on their mind. Not a lot of understanding of social norms and socially appropriate behavior. One of my students comes up to me and asks to speak to me outside of the classroom. I thought maybe he was dealing with something personal and needed to talk about it, so I said okay. He proceeds to tell me that I'm the sexiest thing he has ever seen. I had to try to squash that right away. I told him that he can't say that to me because I'm his teacher. It's not appropriate, etc. After that, he asked for a hug. Lesson not learned. I teach high school in Japan. At this particular school, the kids are low academic, so are gonna turn out to be restaurant cooks, farmers, and the like. And as their future doesn't look bright, the girls are obsessed with finding a husband by the time they graduate. Sometimes, those husbands turn out to be younger teachers, so I, 24 at the time, got hit on a lot. The most awkward moment was when a group of girls came to clean the teacher's room. Japanese students clean their own schools every day, and several of them came with their skirts rolled higher and kept bending over to clean, giving me full-on and deliberate panty shots. With the language barrier between me and my coworkers, I was really worried about this, legit stressing over it all afternoon before I decided to tell my supervisor. She just laughed and said girls will be girls. That was pretty tame compared to what female foreign teachers are put through at low academic schools. I was a long-term substitute in a rural high school right of college. I was teaching history and this girl, probably 16, was texting the entire time without letting up, even after I warned her repeatedly. Finally I confiscate the phone. The rule was, if your phone was taken, the only person who could get it back was a parent/guardian at the end of the day, due to the fact the school was dealing with the backlash of a major sexting scandal. During lunch I'm setting up a lesson for the next class and the girl comes back into the classroom and asks for her phone back, in which I tell her it was already turned into the office. At this point you can tell she is getting annoyed and asks me to call down and get it back for her, in which I tell her I can't. She begins to bawl, telling me that her parents were out of town until Saturday, and being that it was a 3-day weekend, the earliest she could get it back was Tuesday afternoon. I tell her I'm sorry for that, but the rules were the rules. After I tell her that, she immediately switches her tune and begins to ask me about my wife and son, and I tell her it is neither the time nor place to discuss it. With zero humor in her voice she looks at me in the eye and tells me if I call down to request her phone back she will give me a blowjob. Without skipping a beat I immediately reopened the door she closed and waved for the teacher across the hall to come into the room. When the teacher comes in, the student storms out in a huff. I explain to the teacher what happened and immediately report it to the principal, who calls the girl in. When the principal and school counselor are talking to her, she admits that she offered to blow me and then says you must fire the ref *****. Girl gets sent back to class and the principal calls the superintendent, and this snowballs all the way to a meeting with the student, her parents, school administrators and their lawyer the next week. Parents are obviously irate and accuse me of molesting their daughter, and luckily there was enough evidence to prove nothing happened. After the parents realize their daughter was the source of this massive embarrassment, they decide to pull her out and homeschool her. Luckily, I was only there for another week, but I decided to stop subbing after that. College student here. A classmate in my police investigations course is the instructor's granddaughter. One day we were talking about sexual assaults and the instructor asked what type of evidence could be left behind on a condom. The granddaughter quickly raised her hand and said, DNA from saliva. The instructor, her grandfather, asked her to elaborate. I was horrified as I watched her gesture, as though she had a condom in her hand, and ripped the package open with her mouth. Hence the possibility of saliva evidence. Subbed for a high school Spanish class one day. A female upperclassman showed up during my planning hour looking for the normal Spanish teacher. After being informed of the teacher's absence, she stuck around and initiated small talk, claiming she was a teacher's aide in gym and wasn't needed on this day. Based only on my own instinct, she seemed a little too friendly for having never met me before. Just felt off right from the start. I propped my classroom door open and didn't really give her much feedback as I prepared for class, but she kept talking and it kept getting more personal. Without any prompting, she began explaining how she'd moved out of her parents' house. She appeared to be 16 or 17 and now lived with 3 college-aged males while she worked as a waitress at what sounded like a strip club. That's typically not the type of thing to open up to a random substitute teacher you met 5 minutes ago. She segued from that to men's fetishes and how some of the people she served had a thing for pregnant women. It seemed like she was angling to see if I'd open up about my own interests. That wasn't going to happen. I try to be a good listener for my students under most circumstances, but this one set off some alarms. I stood up, asked where the drinking fountain was, already knew, but needed an excuse, then promptly left the room and didn't return until my planning hour had concluded. I left school that day wondering if I was just being paranoid or whether a girl with that kind of story is something I should have reported to the front office, or whether it's a home life thing and thus out of a school's control. One way or another, it probably tops the awkward teaching mountain for me so far. TL. Doctor, female high school student approached substitute teacher and began talking about life working at strip club, then tried to engage in conversation about sexual fetishes. This is a gross porta potty story. Read with caution. My friend was in high school and on some sort of history trip with her history teacher and a young teaching assistant. My friend kept on playing with her phone despite her history teacher telling my friend repeatedly to put it away. Finally, the history teacher said something like, "If I see that phone one more time, there's no telling what I'm gonna do with it." During the trip, they are visiting an old army fort that is being remodeled and there are only porta potties nearby. My friend wanted to use her phone, but was afraid of being caught. So she found an unused porta potty and used her phone in there. When she was done, she tried to put her phone in her purse. It slipped and, you guessed it, fell into the potty. Even though the potty hadn't been used, she was still too grossed out to get it with her hand. So she ran to find the teacher or the assistant for help. It took her a long time, but she found the assistant inside one of the buildings. As they are leaving the building, to their horror they see the teacher leave the porta potty and go around to the other side of another building. As my friend and the assistant are approaching the potty, my friend is saying repeatedly, "Please don't let what I think she did become true." It was true alright. The teacher had taken a dump on her cell. They were both grossed out, not wanting to deal with the situation. They both found the teacher. The teacher didn't believe them until they showed her the evidence. Mortified, the teacher proceeds to remove the cell with the help of a plastic bag and clean it off with tissues. But my friend refused to believe it wasn't on purpose. After what the teacher said to her on the bus, there was even a conference with her mom, the principal, the teacher, the assistant, and my friend about it. Had 2 students, girls, asked to go to the restroom and I allowed them. They didn't come back until class was over. The girls explained they went to the bathroom because one of them was taking a pregnancy test. It was positive. I said congratulations then recommended they go speak to the counselor or school nurse. Edit 1. When typing this last night I didn't give a damn about punctuation, grammar, complete sentences, etc. Update. A few have asked, and the girl did decide to keep her baby. Her boyfriend/baby daddy was arrested that same semester and I have no idea how long he remained in jail. He was in my class as well, and I know he wasn't released that semester because I never saw him again. I saw my previous student one more time the following year after she had graduated and she was working the drive-through cash register at a local fast food restaurant. Like and subscribe for more content.